Wing Commander is one of the few early video game movies that seemed like a really good idea. I mean, if you look at the previous entries in this, most of them just seem like bad ideas. If you thought the Super Mario Bros. Movie was bad, really, how good could it have been? It's a movie based on Super Mario Bros. It's not a concept that lends itself well to the big screen. But Wing Commander is a concept that lends itself quite well to the big screen. I haven't really played the games. I played a little bit of Wing Commander 3, but I'm not super familiar with the series. What I do know, however, is that the games were chock full of live-action cutscenes, and not the shitty ones like you'd expect from a late 90s game, but they had some pretty good actors like Mark Hamill and Malcolm McDowell. So I couldn't help but wonder why, when the Wing Commander movie came out, those guys were nowhere to be seen, and instead the biggest name attached to the movie was Freddie Prinze Jr. I didn't see the movie when it came out, or actually I didn't see it at all until I watched it for this review, but I sort of knew what to expect based on the overwhelmingly bad reviews this movie has gotten over the years. Or at least I thought I did. The fact is, I was sort of amazed by the fact that Wing Commander doesn't suck. I mean, it's not exactly a great movie by any means. It has its problems, which I'll get into, of course. But the fact is, this is at the very least a watchable film. After seeing it, I looked up to some of the criticisms that the movie had, and I was surprised to find that most of them are not very objective. It seems the majority of people who panned the movie were trying to compare it to the games, complaining that they didn't have the same high-caliber actors, and oddly enough, bitching about how the enemy alien race, the Kilrathi, looked, saying that they didn't look anything like they did in the games. Now, I find that to be pretty amusing, as from what I can tell, the look of the Kilrathi aliens in the games themselves has changed drastically from game to game, so there's no consistency anyway. But you know, I'm not a purist. I don't care if the story isn't the one from the games, or if it doesn't use the same characters, or if the aliens look different. And this is especially compounded by the fact that I'm not that familiar with the games anyway. I just want to be entertained, and at its core, Wing Commander is entertaining. The story sets up that after mankind started exploring space, we came across the Kilrathi, who were openly hostile. They tried diplomacy, but it doesn't work. These guys just can't coexist with us, so there's nothing left but open war. Anyway, the Kilrathi get their hands on an important navigational computer, which gives them the means to reach and attack Earth. The human fleet is 2 hours behind the Kilrathi fleet, so by the time they arrive at Earth to fight, the Kilrathi could already do loads of damage. So they get the closest ship they can, the Tiger Claw, to try and delay the Kilrathi fleet by any means necessary. Another backstory has to do with the Pilgrim War. This one is weird because at first it seemed like I was supposed to know about it going into the movie, something that I'm not too fond of, like it was from the games or something, but the entire story is told throughout the movie. Basically, the Pilgrims are an offshoot of humanity who believe themselves to be divine based on their explorative powers. They're able to sense things in space that no one else can. Because they started to think that they were gods, this led to a war, which they lost, and now Pilgrims and their descendants are kind of shat on by the majority of people. The main character is half Pilgrim, though he doesn't know anything about his heritage, but carries around his mother's Pilgrim cross for luck. The story basically involves the crew of the Tiger Claw, who basically argue, fight, fuck, and get into trouble. They're a bunch of goofballs led by the Wing Commander Angel, who comes off as kind of a bitch. The plot of the movie is not exactly multi-layered or heavy. It just involves several skirmishes with the Kilrathi and trying to remain undetected while delaying them. Apparently, several plot elements were cut from the film before it was released, including the fact that the human admiral was a traitor and was in league with the Kilrathi. Some things seem really obvious to me, like the Captain Taggart was a pilgrim, but they reveal it at the end as if it's sort of a surprise. Also, at times the movie can be slow. It's not that it takes too many scenes to get to the point, but rather that each scene seems to be pretty long. But the biggest flaw is the acting, which ranges from passable to poor. The worst is Freddie Prinze Jr., who stands out like a sore thumb. He seems so out of place in this setting. It's like if you were watching a Western and Darth Vader came up on a horse waving his lightsaber around. Well, okay, actually that would be pretty awesome. But despite all these flaws, Wing Commander isn't really a bad movie. The special effects were surprisingly good for 1999. The plot is basic, But that works for the movie, as it's running on a fairly thin premise to begin with, and it doesn't try to overextend itself. It's wholly unpretentious. The movie's humor may fall flat, as it relies too much on the characters being goofy rather than putting any sort of real wit into it, but there's enough action and intrigue to keep me interested for the movie's runtime. Like I said, this isn't exactly a great movie, nor is it the travesty that people have made it out to be. I think that, were it called anything else other than Wing Commander, people would have been more than willing to forgive its flaws and take it for what it is. That being said, it's an average film. It's not anything special, but it's inoffensive. So I'll give it a 5 out of a possible 10, which paints me as pleasantly surprised, as I thought it would be a lot worse than it was.